A single generative AI query consumes roughly 10 times the amount of electricity as a standard search engine query.
10 times. And honestly, that is just for a very simple text output.
Look up at the sky right now. When you use the phrase the cloud, you probably picture something entirely weightless.
Right, like it's this ethereal thing.
Exactly. An invisible infinite layer just floating silently above our heads. But the reality, the cloud is a 2 million square foot concrete fortress.
Yeah, usually sitting in a completely flat field in Northern Virginia.
And it's surrounded by razor wire, guarded by severe security checkpoints, and it is filled with miles and miles of blinking, screaming server racks.
Racks that generate so much intense, concentrated heat that they require basically the equivalent of a small river just to keep the silicon from melting into slag.
Welcome to MediaGenX. Today we are doing a deep dive into the AI energy crisis. Specifically, we're unpacking the massive physical infrastructure bottleneck that is quietly dictating the future of the global economy.
Because it is arguably one of the greatest marketing illusions of the last 2 decades. I mean, we talk about uploading data as if it's defying gravity. Right.
Totally detached from the physical realm.
Right, completely detached. But every single time you hit enter on a search, or every time you ask a chatbot to summarize a PDF for you, you are triggering a massive, heavy industrial action hundreds of miles away.
Which brings us to the core mission of this deep dive. We have source material here covering what they call the hidden trillion-dollar monopoly no one is talking about.
It's a fascinating look at where capital's actually flowing right now.
Because for years, we have all been obsessing over the software layer of artificial intelligence. We argue about parameter counts, which chatbot is hallucinating, which tech CEO is winning the PR war.
Oh, the digital magic trick.
Exactly. But while everyone was distracted by the software, this massive physical wall was being built right in front of us.
A wall constructed out of copper, steel, uranium, and fresh water. And what's really fascinating here is that the bottleneck for artificial intelligence is no longer the intelligence itself.
Right, the math has largely been figured out.
Yeah, the math is there. The bottleneck is the physical reality of the planet we live on. I mean, we are hitting the hard limits of the electrical grid, the supply chain, and honestly, just basic thermodynamics.
So as we walk through this today, I want you to trace the path of a single AI prompt. Imagine typing a query on your laptop. We are going to follow that signal down through the fiber optic cables, into the densely packed silicon chips.
Through the complex liquid cooling manifolds.
Right, and out to the high voltage electrical transformers, all the way back to the uranium mines that are suddenly the most valuable dirt on Earth. We want to shortcut your understanding of where this digital revolution is violently colliding with the physical world.
Because if you really want to understand where the smart money is moving and where the real systemic risks lie over the next decade, you have to stop looking at this as a software boom.
It is a heavy industrial boom, period. And we are going to break down the actionable playbook for how you can position yourself for it. Plus, we'll get into the dark side of this transition, the geopolitics of the domestic backlash that could derail the whole thing.
Yeah, the regulatory hammer is definitely coming.
But before we get there, to grasp the sheer scale of this, we first have to understand the fundamental physics of a digital thought. Let's unpack the math here.
It starts with recognizing how incredibly efficient the internet had become before AI came along.
Right, for the last 20 years, internet infrastructure was actually getting leaner. I mean, a standard Google search today is a total miracle of optimization. You hit enter, it takes a fraction of a second, and it uses roughly 1/10 of a watt-hour of energy.
Which is almost nothing. To put that into perspective, you could leave a standard 60-watt incandescent light bulb on for an hour, and you would consume more power than executing 1,000 traditional web searches.
It's incredibly lean. Think of it this way. A traditional search is essentially like walking into a massive, highly organized library. You ask the librarian for a specific document from a specific filing cabinet.
They know exactly where it is.
Right, they grab it and they hand it to you. It is a retrieval process. It is quick, it is low friction, and it requires very little energy.
But an AI query is totally different. That is not a retrieval process. You are not asking a database to fetch an existing file. You are asking a neural network to compute something entirely new.
If we build on that library analogy, it's the difference between looking up a recipe in a cookbook versus, say, hiring a master chef to invent a completely new, never-before-seen dish right there in your kitchen.
In real time.
Exactly. In real time, using ingredients they have to source and synthesize on the spot. And the math behind that real-time synthesis requires a terrifying amount of power.
Hence that 10 times multiplier we mentioned at the start.
Right. And as you noted earlier, that 10x multiplier on a single prompt is just the tip of the iceberg. The real energy black hole, the thing that is fundamentally breaking the power grid, is the training phase.
Yeah, the training runs are just staggering. Because before an AI model can answer your simple question about a recipe, it has to be trained on essentially all human knowledge.
And what does that actually look like physically?
Well, training a frontier model means taking tens of thousands of highly specialized graphics processing units, or GPUs, and you have to run them at absolute maximum capacity for months on end.
Let's pause there for a second, because I think people hear GPU and they just think of a slightly better computer processor, like the CPU sitting in their laptop. Why does a GPU pull so much more power?
It really comes down to the fundamental architecture of the chip. A traditional central processing unit, a CPU, is brilliant at sequential processing. It is designed to do one very complex task extremely fast and then move to the next.
Okay, so like a single incredibly brilliant mathematician solving complex equations one after another.
Perfect analogy, yes. A GPU, on the other hand, is designed for parallel processing. So instead of one brilliant mathematician, a GPU has thousands of simpler cores that all operate simultaneously.
Which is exactly what neural networks need, right?
Yeah.
Because AI isn't doing one complex math problem, it's doing billions of relatively simple matrix multiplications all at the exact same time.
Precisely. To calculate the probability of which word should come next in a sentence, the neural network is firing millions of pathways simultaneously. And every single one of those pathways requires switching microscopic transistors on and off.
And that switching requires electrical current.
Lots of it. Because you are firing thousands of cores concurrently across tens of thousands of GPUs in a massive server farm, the instantaneous electrical draw is just astronomical.
I was reading that the energy required just to train one single state-of-the-art frontier model is equivalent to the annual electricity consumption of tens of thousands of residential homes.
It is, which introduces a concept that grid engineers are completely terrified of right now, the baseload monster.
The baseload monster, I love that term, but let's break down what it actually means for the physical grid.
This is a really critical concept to understand. The entire global power grid was designed around human rhythms. It operates on a predictable curve.
Right, we wake up in the morning, we turn on our lights, we make coffee.
Exactly. Then the factories spin up for the morning shift, the office buildings turn on their massive air conditioning units, power demand spikes during the day, but then as the sun goes down, we go home. The factories close, people go to sleep.
And the power grid ramps down. There is a natural ebb and flow to it, sort of breathing mechanism to the whole grid.
Right. Grid operators map this out meticulously. They know exactly when to spin down certain power plants. But machines do not sleep. An AI data center operates at 100% capacity, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year.
It does not observe holidays.
No, it does not. It demands a flat, unbroken, massive river of electrons at all times.
Okay, wait. I have to push back here, or at least ask the question that I know is bothering you if you're listening to this right now. The term baseload monster sounds incredibly dramatic. But isn't a data center just a large commercial building?
I mean, on the outside, sure.
Right, and we have massive skyscrapers in Manhattan running their lights and servers constantly. We've had huge cloud data centers for a decade now. People stream 4K video on Netflix all night. Billions of people are constantly refreshing TikTok and Instagram. Why is the grid suddenly buckling right now? Is this AI compute really that fundamentally different from the cloud infrastructure we already have?
I would actually push back quite strongly on that assumption because the difference is profound. It all comes down to compute density versus data transfer.
Okay, unpack that.
When you stream a movie on Netflix, you are engaging in data transfer. The movie file already exists on a server somewhere. The infrastructure simply takes those packets of data and routes them over fiber optic cables to your television.
So the heavy lifting is happening in the networking layer, the physical movement of the data from point A to point B.
Exactly. So streaming is essentially just an incredibly efficient conveyor belt moving boxes around a warehouse. The server pulling the file isn't doing massive mathematical calculations, it's just fetching and sending.
But AI isn't a conveyor belt.
No, AI is a localized explosion of math. To answer an AI prompt, all the servers in the warehouse have to constantly talk to each other, firing billions of parameters simultaneously, calculating probabilities across multi-dimensional space.
So the density of the electrical current flowing into the silicon just to make those real-time calculations happen is unprecedented in commercial computing.
Unprecedented. When the regional grid operator looks at a traditional data center, they see a steady, manageable draw. But when they look at an AI data center, they see an industrial aluminum smelter.
An aluminum smelter, that is the perfect analogy. And the public grid simply wasn't built to accommodate hundreds of new aluminum smelters suddenly popping up in suburban neighborhoods.
Right. And because the public grid is curving and breathing and the AI demand is this relentless flatline, the big tech players are hitting a massive wall.
Which leads us to the data center land grab, and a phenomenon the sources call the interconnection queue crisis. Let's talk about the real estate side of this.
So if you want to build a data center, you can't just buy a nice plot of land, build a warehouse, and plug a giant extension cord into the nearest telephone pole.
That would be nice.
It would be, but you have to enter what's called an interconnection queue. You have to formally petition the regional grid operator entities like PJM in the Midwest and Mid-Atlantic for permission to draw that much power.
And the grid operator has to do all these massive feasibility studies, right? They have to figure out if letting you draw 300 megawatts is going to brown out the neighboring town.
Exactly. It's a massive bureaucratic and engineering process. And right now, in the places where tech companies want to build the most like Data Center Alley in Northern Virginia, which handles an absurd percentage of global internet traffic, the interconnection queue is functionally broken.
The backlog is just too big.
The backlog of requested power is so massive that the system has essentially seized up entirely.
The numbers on this are staggering. The data shows that if a major tech giant applies for a grid connection today in one of these premium hotspots, they aren't being told to wait a few months. They are being told they have to wait until the year 2031 to get power.
2031. And if we connect this to the broader reality of the technology sector, a 7-year wait is an absolute death sentence.
It's an eternity in tech.
It really is. I mean, Moore's law dictates that computing power roughly doubles every 2 years. Missing 7 years means missing 3 or 4 entire generations of technological evolution.
If you wait until 2031 to turn your servers on, your hardware will be completely obsolete and your competitors will have captured the entire market.
You'd be completely irrelevant. So what do? If you are a multi-trillion-dollar company sitting on a mountain of cash and the local public utility says wait 7 years, you don't wait.
You find a loophole. And here is where it gets really cutthroat. The source material outlines how tech giants and massive private equity firms are bypassing the public interconnection queues entirely by building what is being called the ghost grid.
The ghost grid, I love this concept. They are deploying capital into completely unexpected real estate markets. They aren't looking for pristine, empty lots in corporate office parks anymore.
No, they are scouring the country for decommissioned industrial sites. We are talking abandoned steel mills, closed automotive plants, shuttered paper factories.
Because they don't care about the building at all. They're going to bulldoze the old factory anyway. They're buying the real estate purely for the plug.
Exactly. I want to make sure you, as the listener, really grasp the mechanics of this, because this is where the money is made. They are buying the legacy infrastructure. If a defunct steel mill from the 1970s happens to have a 200 megawatt high voltage electrical substation already attached to it.
And that substation is already legally wired into the regional transmission lines.
Right. Then the value of that dirt multiplies by 10 overnight.
Let's explain what a substation actually is, though, because it isn't just a heavy-duty power outlet on a wall.
No, it's a massive fenced-in yard full of transformers and switchgears. Its job is to take the ultra-high voltage power from the main transmission lines, the massive metal towers you see driving down the highway, and step it down to a voltage that a facility can actually use without exploding.
And building a new one from scratch takes years of environmental permitting and zoning approvals, but if an old factory already has one, it's a golden ticket. You just bulldoze the mill and plug the new data center directly into the dead steel mill's infrastructure.
It represents a profound shift in capital allocation. Big tech is effectively privatizing segments of the power grid. They're looking at the public infrastructure and saying, look, if you cannot move fast enough to accommodate our compute needs, we will simply buy the infrastructure ourselves.
It is a totally wild paradigm shift. The primary bottleneck of artificial intelligence is no longer the highly advanced silicon chips being fabricated in Taiwan.
Right, it's the physical plug in the wall.
Exactly. If you control the high voltage substation, you control the AI.
But here's where the physics get even more complicated. Let's say you win the real estate lottery. You buy the dead steel mill, you secure the 200 megawatt plug, you bulldoze the site, and you build the massive data center.
You install 50,000 top-of-the-line GPUs?
You flip the switch, and then you immediately slam into the next immovable law of nature, which is thermodynamics.
Thermodynamics always wins.
Because what happens when you pump 200 megawatts of raw electricity into 50,000 densely packed silicon chips? The kinetic energy of all those electrons flowing through the microscopic logic gates doesn't just disappear.
No, it turns into heat. A terrifying amount of heat.
To visualize the scale of this thermal crisis, we really have to look at server rack density. Just 5 or 6 years ago, a standard data center server rack consumed roughly 5 to 10 kilowatts of power.
And at 5 kilowatts, you can cool that with air. You install massive industrial air conditioning units on the roof, you arrange the server racks in hot aisles and cold aisles, and you basically blow freezing air directly through the servers.
The air carries the heat away, it's loud, it's expensive, but it works.
It works for 5 kilowatts. But modern, dense AI server racks are not consuming 5 kilowatts. They're consuming upwards of 120 kilowatts of power per rack.
I tried to mentally visualize 120 kilowatts. Imagine taking a high-powered electric space heater, the kind that can quickly warm up a large living room in the dead of winter.
Okay.
Now imagine taking 120 of those space heaters, turning every single one of them onto maximum heat, and cramming all of them into a single refrigerator-sized metal cabinet.
The thermal density is just completely lethal to microelectronics. If you don't remove that heat instantly, the silicon chips will literally unsolder themselves from the motherboards and melt into a puddle.
And here is the thermodynamic reality. You cannot cool 120 kilowatts with air. It is physically impossible. Air simply does not have the thermal mass or the heat capacity to absorb and carry thermal energy away fast enough at that density.
You could blow a hurricane-force wind through the rack and the chips would still melt.
So the entire architecture of the data center industry is being forced to pivot to liquid cooling.
Yes. Water and engineered liquids are vastly more efficient at absorbing heat than air. So instead of just blowing cold air into a room, they're now having to do precision plumbing inside the servers themselves.
They're bolting tiny metal cold plates directly onto the silicon chips.
Exactly. They pump specialized cooling fluid through microchannels in those plates, which absorbs the heat directly from the chip.
And it gets even more extreme than cold plates. I was reading the source material about immersion cooling. They're literally taking entire server blades, live motherboards with electricity coursing through them, and fully submerging them into vats of what are called dielectric fluids.
It sounds crazy, but a dielectric fluid is an engineered synthetic liquid that is thermally conductive but electrically non-conductive, meaning it absorbs heat beautifully, but it does not transmit electricity.
So you can dunk a fully powered bare metal server into a tank of this stuff, and it won't short out.
Right. The fluid physically surrounds the hot chips, boils off, turns into a vapor, hits a condenser at the top of the tank, turns back into liquid, and rains back down on the servers.
It pulls the thermal energy away far faster than air or even standard cold plates ever could. It is brilliant engineering.
It is, but thermodynamics has a very strict rule. Heat cannot be destroyed, it can only be moved.
Right.
So you pull the heat off the chip into the fluid, great, but that fluid is now boiling hot. You have to pump it away from the servers to a secondary system to cool the fluid back down.
And that secondary system is usually a massive array of cooling towers situated outside the data center building. And how do those massive industrial cooling towers get rid of the heat? By evaporating water into the atmosphere.
Which brings us to the hidden friction point of this entire boom. The water wars.
Yes, the water wars, because you look at the raw data and a single mid-sized AI data center can evaporate millions of gallons of water every single day.
Millions of gallons daily. And you have to look at the geographical context here. Where are these massive data centers historically built?
Usually in regions with cheap, flat land, abundant sunshine, and low taxes.
which unfortunately often perfectly overlaps with geographic regions that are already facing severe generational water stress.
So if we look at the political and regulatory realities, we're seeing major clashes right now. Municipal governments and local water authorities are basically going to war with tech developers. In the American Southwest, in places like Arizona and Nevada, and across various parts of Europe, local councils are literally freezing data center construction.
And, you can completely understand the municipal argument. A city council looks at their local aquifers, they look at the water tables dropping year after year, and they are forced to say, look, we simply cannot afford to allocate our municipal water rights to cool a server farm.
It sets up a direct physical conflict between the infrastructure required for the digital economy and the most basic natural resource required for human survival and agriculture.
It really does.
This raises a massive geographic question for the future. If you can't get grid interconnection in Virginia and you can't get water rights in Arizona, what does this mean for the hardware landscape? Are we going to see a total geographic shift?
I think we have to.
Will tech companies abandon their traditional fiber optic hubs near major cities and just start building fortresses on the shores of the Great Lakes? Or up in the freezing climates of Scandinavia, completely redrawing the map of the global internet?
It is more than highly probable. It is already happening right now. We are seeing a massive push toward the Nordic countries.
And it's not just for the colder ambient air, right?
No, the ambient air helped slightly with the secondary cooling loops, but primarily they are moving for the abundant, unfettered access to freshwater and legacy hydroelectric power. The geography of the future economy is going to be dictated strictly by proximity to water and power.
Speaking of power, that transitions us perfectly into the next major hurdle. Let's assume you solve the location problem. You have the land, you have the water rights, but you still need a baseload monster of electricity. How do you power this revolution?
Well, the obvious answer, especially given the climate pledges of every major tech CEO, is renewables.
Right, why not just buy 10,000 acres of desert and build the biggest solar and wind farm on Earth right next to the data center?
It's a logical thought, but it highlights the fatal flaw of renewable energy when it comes to highly sensitive AI compute. Wind and solar are incredible technologies. They are absolutely vital to the grid transition, but they possess one inherent characteristic. They are intermittent.
The sun sets, the wind stops blowing, cloud cover rolls in.
Exactly. And as we established with the baseload monster concept, an AI data center does not pair if it's cloudy. It demands a flat line of continuous power.
And the sensitivity of the hardware is what people fail to grasp. If an AI training run experiences even a millisecond of voltage sag, it's a disaster.
Let's pause there and actually define voltage sag for the listener because it's important. What is actually happening at the electrical level?
A voltage sag is a momentary decrease in the root mean square voltage of the electrical current. It's not a full blackout. The power doesn't shut off entirely. It's just a tiny momentary dip in the amplitude of the electricity flowing into the facility.
So in your house, a voltage sag might make the kitchen lights flicker for a fraction of a second. You wouldn't even care.
Right. But in an AI data center, that tiny drop in current means the microscopic logic gates inside the GPU might not get enough juice to flip from a 0 to a 1.
Which means the math is fundamentally wrong.
Exactly. The computation is corrupted. And because these models are trained sequentially, building upon previous calculations, a corrupted calculation deep inside a neural net ruins the entire batch.
You could have 50,000 GPUs running at maximum capacity for 3 continuous weeks, and a fraction of a second of power instability means you have to throw out the checkpoint data, purge the memory, and start all over.
You literally burn millions of dollars in compute time instantly.
So AI infrastructure requires firm, dispatchable, 24/7 baseload power, and if you want that power to be zero carbon to hit your corporate ESG targets, there is literally only one option on the table.
Nuclear energy.
The unlikely savior.
This is where the story takes a wildly unexpected turn. The tech billionaires, the software guys who built search engines and social networks, are suddenly becoming the biggest champions and financiers of the nuclear energy industry.
They're acting as the guarantors of the entire nuclear supply chain. We are seeing major tech hyperscalers signing what are known as PPAs, power purchase agreements.
Explain the mechanics of a PPA, because it's not just buying electricity on a monthly monthly bill like we do at home.
No, a power purchase agreement is a long-term financial contract. The tech company goes to a nuclear operator and says, look, if you build a new reactor, or if you bring an old one back online, we guarantee that we will buy 100% of the electricity it generates at a fixed price for the next 20 years.
And that legally binding contract gives the nuclear operator the financial security, the bankability to go to Wall Street, get a massive loan, and actually build the highly capital-intensive nuclear plant.
Exactly. The tech companies are deploying their trillion-dollar market caps to completely de-risk nuclear construction. They are even paying to restart shuttered, decommissioned nuclear plants. Facilities that have been closed down and mothballed for decades are being brought back from the dead specifically to feed this compute demand.
And as a direct result, the price of uranium, the raw physical fuel required to boil the water inside these reactors, is surging on the global commodities market.
And it goes beyond just reviving legacy gigawatt-scale reactors. The real technological frontier here is the development of SMRs, small modular reactors.
Yes, I am absolutely fascinated by SMRs, because the traditional way of building a nuclear plant involves 10 years of bespoke, custom construction on site, usually going billions of dollars over budget. An SMR is entirely different.
SMRs are designed to be factory-built. Instead of custom construction, you manufacture the reactor components on an assembly line, which drastically lowers the cost and standardizes the safety protocols.
So you build a mini nuclear reactor in a factory, you put it on the back of a wide-load semi-truck, you drive it out to a data center in the middle of nowhere, and you essentially just plug it in.
Exactly. It allows you to completely bypass the public interconnection queue. You don't have to ask the regional grid operator for permission to draw power because you literally brought your own baseload power plant with you.
If we connect this to the bigger historical picture, it is a stunning reversal of fate. The nuclear energy industry in the West was essentially left for dead in the late 1990s and early 2000s.
Right, it was paralyzed by public fear following Chernobyl and Fukushima, immense regulatory hurdles, and frankly, the availability of extremely cheap fracked natural gas.
It was deemed politically and economically unviable. And now, that entire sector is being completely resurrected by the sheer force of the tech sector's balance sheet.
It is the ultimate irony, isn't it? The most cutting-edge, futuristic, ethereal technology humanity has ever built, artificial intelligence, is completely dependent on splitting heavy atoms using fundamental physics we mapped out in the 1950s.
But here's the catch. Even if you have the nuclear reactor and you secure the land and you perfectly engineer the liquid cooling loops, you are still facing another massive physical bottleneck, because you still have to move the electrons from the nuclear reactor core to the silicon chip.
Which brings us to the dirt, the profoundly unsexy bottleneck of the entire revolution: copper and transformers.
It is amazing how often high-level tech analysis overlooks the absolute basics of material science. Copper is the central nervous system of the global electrical grid. Everything relies on its conductivity.
The grounding systems, the transmission lines stretching for hundreds of miles, the massive electrical bus bars inside the data center itself, it's all copper.
An AI build-out is an absolute black hole for copper. If you look at the raw data, the supply of copper is wildly inelastic.
Right, and inelastic meaning the supply cannot quickly react to an increase in demand.
Exactly. You can't just snap your fingers and write an app to create a copper mine. The geological reality is that we have already mined all the easy, high-grade copper deposits on Earth.
What is left are lower-grade porphyry deposits that require moving millions of tons of rock just to get a small amount of metal.
It takes 10 to 15 years of geological surveying, environmental permitting, and heavy construction to dig and operationalize a new copper mine. So the global supply is effectively fixed for the next decade, but the demand from the tech sector is going parabolic.
And that's just the raw wire. Then you have the physical hardware bottlenecks, specifically high-voltage transformers. These are those massive house-sized metal boxes you see sitting behind chain-link fences at substations.
What exactly is happening inside those metal boxes?
A transformer relies on electromagnetic induction to step voltage up or down. When power leaves a power plant, it is stepped up to an ultra-high voltage, sometimes 345,000 volts, so it can travel long distances over transmission lines without losing energy to heat.
But obviously, a server rack cannot accept 345,000 volts.
No, it would vaporize. So the transformer steps that massive voltage down to a much lower usable voltage, like 480 volts, that the facility can safely distribute to the servers.
And the wait lists for these house-sized metal boxes are just insane right now. A few years ago, if a utility needed a custom high-voltage transformer, the lead time was roughly 12 months. Now, the waitlist is 3 to 4 years.
Because building them requires highly specialized, grain-oriented electrical steel, which is in a massive global shortage. And it requires highly skilled manual labor to wind the immense copper coils inside the casing. It cannot be fully automated.
Think about the business implications of that. You are a tech giant. You have billions of dollars in cash, you secured the chips, you bought the land, you signed the nuclear deal. But your entire multi-billion-dollar campus is completely paralyzed sitting in the dark because you are waiting 48 months for a heavy metal box from an industrial manufacturing plant.
It's a phenomenal bottleneck.
Here is where it gets really interesting to me. It is like you go out and buy the most expensive, state-of-the-art, multi-gigabit fiber internet plan for your house. You buy the absolute fastest supercomputer in the world. But the only way you can connect that computer to the wall is by using a frayed 30-year-old dial-up telephone cable.
The entire multi-billion-dollar ecosystem chokes at the oldest, most basic piece of industrial technology.
And the market impact of this bottleneck is profound. We are seeing aggressive secondary market hoarding. Tech companies are so desperate for electrical equipment that they are abandoning traditional procurement altogether.
They are simply buying up entire electrical manufacturing facilities just to guarantee they have priority access to transformers and switchgears.
Heavy, grease-covered, Midwestern industrial manufacturing companies, businesses that Silicon Valley has ignored or mocked for decades, are suddenly enjoying the kind of crazy pricing power and profit margins that we usually only see in software monopolies.
Which naturally leads us to the question of application. How does a macro-level understanding of this physical reality translate into an actionable framework? Where is the smart money flowing?
This is where we deliver on the MediaGenX promise. We're going to walk through an actionable wealth playbook based on the economic trends we've discussed. Now, we must state very clearly up front, this is an economic analysis, not explicit financial advice.
Right, we were not telling you what specific assets to buy.
We are providing a framework, a lens through which to view the changing economy based on the capital flows. Because the real opportunity over the next decade isn't necessarily guessing which consumer chatbot wins the popularity contest.
The real wealth is built by owning the physical toll booths that every single chatbot operator has to drive through.
Precisely. Step 1 in the playbook. The first major sector experiencing a paradigm shift is the utilities sector. Historically, regulated public utilities were the most boring assets in the economy. They were viewed as slow-growth bond proxies meant for retirees who just wanted a safe 4% dividend yield.
But that model is fracturing. Because of the interconnection crisis we discussed, utilities located in data center-dense regions are being legally mandated to execute massive, multi-billion-dollar grid upgrade projects.
They have to build new substations, string new transmission lines, and drastically increase capacity. And here is the crucial financial mechanism that makes this so lucrative. Regulated utilities operate on a rate-based model.
Exactly. They are legally allowed by public utility commissions to pass their approved capital expenditure costs onto the ratepayers, plus a guaranteed rate of return on that equity.
So if a utility is forced to spend $5 billion upgrading the grid for AI, their rate base expands, which mechanically guarantees their future earnings growth. They are transitioning from boring dividend stocks into high-growth, monopolistic infrastructure plays.
The second massive shift is at the base layer, fuel and miners. If AI requires a baseload monster of continuous power, the underlying thesis is that you have to invest in the commodities that create that power.
Which brings us back to uranium for the nuclear renaissance, but also, critically, natural gas.
Yes, natural gas is the silent workhorse here.
Because while the tech companies absolutely want nuclear, reactors take time to build. And when the wind stops blowing and the solar panels go dark, the grid operators have to instantaneously fire up natural gas peaker plants to keep the grid frequency stable and prevent the data centers from crashing.
Owning the physical fuel extraction is a direct, tangible hedge against the digital economy. As the digital world exponentially expands, the physical extraction of energy must expand in tandem to support it.
Step 3 in the playbook is what the financial models call thermal management, or the shovel sellers. This is a fascinating subsector. We are talking about mid-cap industrial engineering companies.
These are the businesses manufacturing the complex liquid cooling manifolds, engineering the proprietary dielectric fluids for the immersion tanks, and building the high-voltage switchgears.
These are highly specialized business-to-business companies. And right now, they have multi-year backlogs of orders. They have incredible revenue visibility stretching out to 2030. And the beauty of their business model is that they are completely insulated from the hype cycle of consumer AI.
Right. It does not matter to the cooling manufacturer if Google's new AI model is vastly superior to OpenAI's model, or if a startup's new app fails completely. The underlying hardware still gets incredibly hot, and it still requires industrial thermal management.
They are selling the picks and shovels during the gold rush. And finally, step 4, the entrepreneurial opportunity. The overarching advice for developers right now is quite blunt. Stop building AI software wrappers. Stop making generic applications that just use an API to plug into an existing language model.
The moat there is zero. Anyone can copy it in a weekend.
The real gap in the market is in the physical infrastructure. There is a massive, critical shortage of blue-collar and technical tradespeople who actually know how to build and maintain these hyperscale facilities.
We are talking about master plumbers who understand the fluid dynamics of advanced liquid cooling loops, high-voltage electrical technicians who can safely service and maintain hyper-complex substations.
The economic model suggests that starting a B2B maintenance or a specialized contracting company focused strictly on the physical upkeep of AI data centers is one of the highest probability entrepreneurial plays available right now.
It totally reframes the narrative of the tech industry. I mean, for 20 years, the aspirational image of tech was a guy in a hoodie coding an app in a coffee shop in San Francisco.
Now, the future of tech wealth looks a lot more like a guy in a hard hat welding specialized cooling pipes and managing 345 kilovolt transmission lines.
But every industrial boom carries immense friction, and we cannot discuss a massive physical land grab without analyzing the systemic risks it creates. We have to look at the dark side of this transition.
Because the macro risks here are not just financial, they are deeply societal. Let's start with geopolitics. In the 21st century, raw compute power is directly correlated to economic dominance and military superiority. The nation that controls the most advanced AI models will dictate the global economy, scientific discovery, and defense capabilities.
And as we have exhaustively established, you cannot possess advanced AI without possessing massive amounts of physical infrastructure and baseload energy. Therefore, energy policy is now explicitly AI policy.
And AI policy is national security policy, which is driving a rapid acceleration of deglobalization in the tech sector. We are seeing massive state-sponsored subsidies, like the CHIES Act, being deployed specifically to ensure that semiconductor fabrication, data center construction, and the energy required to run them remain strictly onshore.
Nations are treating compute capacity like they used to treat strategic petroleum reserves.
And while that onshore push makes strategic sense for governments, it creates intense domestic backlash, which is a massive looming risk for the companies involved. You really have to look at this from the perspective of an average working-class citizen.
Exactly. Let's trace the economics of that backlash. Say a local public utility realizes they need to build a brand new $1 billion natural gas power plant just to ensure the regional grid does not collapse under the weight of a newly permitted big tech data center. Who actually pays for that billion-dollar plant?
Under the regulated utility model we discussed earlier, the ratepayer pays for it. The capital cost of that new plant is baked into the rate base and passed down to everyday residential consumers.
So a retired couple living on a fixed income sees their monthly power bill jump by 20%, specifically to subsidize the electrical infrastructure required by a multi-trillion-dollar technology corporation to train an AI model.
If we look at regulatory forecasting, this creates a massive political flashpoint. Once the general public fully connects the dots, once voters realize that their rising cost of living, their higher utility bills, and their municipal water shortages are directly tied to the AI boom in their backyard, the political pressure on local representatives will be immense.
We are already seeing the leading edge of this regulatory hammer. Companies that are aggressively burning through regional power and water without proactively investing in their own sustainable infrastructure are creating a massive target on their backs.
If ratepayer anger boils over, the blowback could force aggressive new zoning laws, immediate moratoriums on construction, or punitive taxation on compute power, which could freeze development entirely.
It is an incredible historical irony. The most futuristic, software-driven technology we have ever conceived is currently generating the most traditional, industrial age, geopolitical, and societal friction imaginable.
We are having fights over copper yields, fights over aquifer depletion, and fights over industrial zoning loss.
It just proves that the digital world is entirely tethered to the physical world. We can never truly escape the hard physical limit of our planet, no matter how advanced our software architecture becomes.
So let's bring this deep dive in for a landing. I want to give you 3 clear takeaways from this conversation. Number 1, the cloud is not an invisible atmosphere. It is a heavy, physical, concrete building.
Number 2, AI computation is a baseload monster that is currently breaking the electrical grid.
And number 3, the real long-term winners of this revolution won't just be the software developers in Silicon Valley. The compounding wealth will flow to the physical gatekeepers, the miners of copper and uranium, the owners of water rights, and the manufacturers of transformers.
The physical toll booths of the digital age.
Exactly. So I want to ask you, the listener, directly. The next time you open a chatbot to summarize an article or generate a piece of code, I want you to think about the physical chain reaction you just initiated. Now that you know the sheer volume of resources, the water, the copper, the raw electricity required to generate a single digital thought, how does that change your view of the AI tools you interact with every day?
And I will leave you with one final polarizing thought to mull over. We have spent this entire deep dive analyzing how much physical energy and resource extraction AI demands from us. But consider this dynamic. As these AI models grow exponentially smarter, they're increasingly being tasked by grid operators to optimize our global energy systems. What happens when an advanced AI runs the simulation, analyzes the entire grid, and mathematically calculates that the most inefficient, unpredictable, and wasteful part of the power ecosystem is the human beings using it? Will the ultimate solution to the AI energy crisis be a system designed by the AI itself, prioritizing its own compute over our lights?
Now that is a thought that will keep you staring at the ceiling tonight. Thank you for joining us on this MediaGenX deep dive into the physical reality of the AI energy crisis. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss our next case study. Remember, this was an economic analysis, not financial advice. Stay curious, stay positioned, and we will catch you on the next one.